Welcome to the Deep Dive. So, today we're opening up a set of sources that are, well, they're deeply philosophical, but also unflinchingly physical.
Yeah, very much so.
We're not really interested in just, theoretical chats about ethics or spirituality today. We're diving right into the core paradox of conscious existence.
Mhm.
And the material we've got, it comes from this really focused, non-dissolutive psychedelic experience, which means the goal wasn't about escaping reality or dissolving the ego.
Right, not about floating away.
Exactly. It was about anchoring consciousness directly and, yeah,
Yeah.
often painfully into the actual physical experience of embodiment.
And that's the hinge, isn't it? The terrifying, beautiful hinge of this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
For centuries, spiritual seekers, they've chased oneness, right? That bliss of ego dissolution, feeling free.
The escape.
The escape, yeah. But this research, it really forces us to confront the fact that we always come back to the body.
Mm.
Always. The body
Yeah.
is the absolute anchor. And when you look through this kind of heightened lens, the main discovery is what the sources call the unbearable cost of embodiment.
That phrase really hits the unbearable cost.
It's the immense constant price paid by, well, the rest of the world for your individual consciousness just to keep going for even one more second.
Yeah.
It's quite something to sit with.
It is. It sounds paralyzing. So that's the weight. If we accept this cost, how do we move forward? How do we not just collapse under it?
Well, that's the mission, isn't it?
Our mission is survival. Yeah, but survival with blueprints, I guess. We need
Right.
to pull out the practical ethics, the architectural designs from this horror almost.
Right. It's about moving beyond that abstract dread, that feeling of being overwhelmed, towards something actionable, real structural insight.
Okay.
So the core question that comes out of this experience, it's pretty uncompromising. If life sustains itself by consuming other life and inevitably causing suffering, what the sources call trophic reality,
Trophic reality, okay.
then how should you live? And maybe even more importantly, how do we need to restructure society to systematically bring down that staggering continuous cost? It's time to unpack that debt.
Okay, let's get into this debt of existence then. Because the sources are clear. This realization isn't just an idea, it's felt. It's somatic.
Exactly.
They lay out this pretty radical idea that the fundamental nature of physical reality, at least as we experience it, is just one of competition and consumption. It's almost zero sum at the energy baseline.
It is. It's like stripping away all the nice layers of abstraction we usually live with. Think about the most basic things, the functions of being alive.
Breathing, eating.
Yeah, breathing, eating, energy, our structure, even our awareness. Everything we think of as fundamental is actually a borrowed resource. It's a debt we've incurred. And the sources, they put it in this devastatingly simple way.
How so?
Well, they say every single breath you take,
Yeah.
that basic I am,
Yeah.
is basically paid for. It's paid for in the silenced breaths of others.
Wow. Okay, hang on. Let's pause there because that phrasing, silenced breaths, it makes it sound, paralyzing. It's one thing to think about the food chain abstractly, but to realize every vital function is a specific borrowed resource.
That's the exact point where the head knowledge crashes right into the gut feeling, the visceral. Consider the heartbeat, the ultimate symbol of life, right?
Sure.
The experience reframes it. It becomes this kind of cosmic debt counter. Every single pump of blood, every pulse of energy, it's derived from the conversion, the processing, and ultimately the death of other entities.
So it's not just energy transfer, it's
Yeah.
life transfer.
It becomes agonizingly specific. The question is, how many heartbeats of other sentient beings had to be sacrificed? Or, had to stop? Just so your own heart is allowed to keep beating. It's not just abstract carbon cycles anymore. It's conscious exchange. It's heavy.
It really is. And what's fascinating, or maybe terrifying, is how that spiritual idea of oneness, the beautiful concept that we're all interconnected.
It's a comforting version.
Right. It gets flipped, inverted, almost weaponized in a way.
It becomes a visceral experience, not just a nice thought. You're suddenly forced to see that interconnection not as some warm, fuzzy unity, but as a shared debt, a shared pain.
Shared pain.
The mystics, when they talk about really deep insight into suffering, sometimes they call this state the crucifixion of empathy.
Wow.
Because suddenly, you're not just watching suffering from the outside, you are participating in it. You feel it as if it's a fragment of your own existence.
And that participation, it goes way beyond just what's on our dinner plate, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The ability for us, for humans, to experience freedom, stability, comfort in our daily lives, That requires this huge amount of control, doesn't it? Geopolitical, economic, physical control over resources, over space.
Completely. The privilege of safety, of comfort, it requires the active displacement or often, yeah, the death of other beings.
Yeah.
Humans and animals both. Our sense of personal space, our heated homes, our air conditioning, all of it is subsidized by costs pushed somewhere else, out of sight mostly.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about our incredible medical advances. This is where the cost becomes like super specific, calculated even.
Yes. When we use advanced treatments for terrible human diseases, we really have to face the exact ethical trade-off.
It's uncomfortable to think about.
It is. The sources catalog, in really excruciating detail, how many sentient lives, specifically mentioning monkeys and rats, had to be forced to endure the exact and worst condition imaginable, often repeatedly in labs, just so our treatments could be developed, tested, proven safe.
So my health, my longevity.
This realization forces your mind to see personal health, comfort, long life, not just as a gift or luck, but as a commodity, one that's directly subsidized by the specific, calculated, often prolonged suffering of particular individuals who had no say in it. They can't speak for themselves.
Bearing witness to that level of suffering, the sources say it becomes overwhelming to the awakened mind.
It's the full, unanesthetized view.
Yeah.
You see the extraction machinery, stripped bare of all the corporate branding, the euphemisms we use. The sources describe this flood of graphic images that just surface in this state of awareness. The feet of cows, pigs, chickens, sure, but also the more targeted, almost gratuitous horrors. Bears in bile farms, dogs raised specifically for meat and torture, cats subjected to cruelty. It's the whole spectrum of domination our species enacts.
And it doesn't stop with animals, does it? The sources say this agony extends to humans, too.
Absolutely. The awakened consciousness suddenly feels like right there. The experience of a starving child. The physical despair of a mother digging her infant out of bombed rubble somewhere far away. Or the villagers poisoned by toxic industrial waste.
Waste from products maybe I'm using without even knowing.
Waste that created the very products the conscious consumer might be using, completely unaware of the toxic origin. This interconnectedness it's revealed as this tight, inescapable web, mutual pain, financial debt, karmic debt. It's all tangled together.
Okay, so we've got this feeling, this dread, this recognition of being part of it all. How does the source material frame the mechanism itself? What's the difference between, say, natural predation and what humanity seems to have amplified?
Right. This is where we need to be really clear with the terms. What was experienced is what biologists call trophic reality.
Trophic reality.
Yeah, it's the scientific necessity that survival requires, transforming energy, mass, life, flow. Every species does it. The sources just strip away the euphemisms, showing the pain that's inherent in that necessary transformation.
But humanity's gone further.
That's the deviation. Humanity seems to have transformed that biological necessity of consumption into something else. Gratuitous suffering, unnecessary suffering.
And this is where the term lower consciousness memes, or LC memes, comes in. What are those exactly?
Yeah, LC memes. Think of them as patterns of self-serving behavior. They prioritize immediate localized gain right here, right now, at the expense of the whole system's coherence.
So they're like bad ideas.
They're more than just bad ideas. They're like self-replicating survival strategies. But they're rooted in a complete amnesia of interconnectedness, of
Forgetting the debt.
forgetting the debt, forgetting the impact. They include ideologies, habits, economic systems where we kill, abuse, extract, not just to sustain life, which is the trophic reality part,
Wow.
but for power, for profit, for pleasure, luxury, dominance. These memes just spin the consumption cycle faster and faster, unnecessarily.
Okay.
So the pain and the dread we were talking about, that's the friction. It's the feeling of that accelerated, gratuitous transformation when you finally see it without the usual psychological defenses, the numbing.
Okay, so this is where the deep dive kind of pivots, right? From the immediate horror of the present to looking at the whole system design, questioning the very evolutionary contract we're operating under.
Exactly. The scrutiny moves beyond just our daily ethical choices.
And the sources talk about the pace of the modern world like a wheel just spinning for the sake of spinning.
That's the machine fueled by those LC memes we just mentioned. It's this mindless acceleration, a compulsion to just follow routine's competition, consumption often driven by anxiety or chasing some temporary chemical reward like an adrenaline hit. There's no real destination anymore. The purpose feels forgotten.
And there's a direct link made in the material between this speed and our physical breakdown.
Absolutely. The sources argue this relentless pace contributes directly to faster aging, to systemic inflammation, to the rapid wear and tear of the body and mind,
Makes sense. The system demands speed, maximum throughput.
which necessitates exhaustion, the direct consequence of forgetting we're all connected, of living only to maximize self-interest and short-term enjoyment. That's the definition of that amnesia state.
But the paradox here, it stretches back way further than just modern times, doesn't it? It touches on evolution itself, the whole predator-prey thing.
That realization, seen through this lens, it's just devastating. When the lion clamps down on the gazelle's throat, yes, it's a struggle for survival, but it's between siblings on the evolutionary tree. It's sibling species killing sibling species. And the sources are really clear. This struggle, even though it's necessary for biological persistence in the current system, it's never peaceful. It's always a confrontation with terror, with the sheer raw will to survive.
And this leads to what felt like the most profound, almost shattering question in the source material. It's aimed right back at the very beginning, at the genetic prime ancestor.
Yes. The question is essentially, was this explosion of complexity, of diversity, of life itself, was it worth it? Given the incomprehensible scale of suffering that came with it.
It's a huge question.
It is. If you trace back billions of years of sentient beings experiencing terror, pain, slow, brutal deaths, from the first tiny nematode maybe right up to the modern factory farm.
Yeah. The sheer scale of that pain can make all the beauty feel, just for a moment, kind of unjustified.
So two perspectives.
Exactly. From one angle, the emergence of consciousness, complexity, life, it's a miracle, right? Astonishing. But from the perspective of the total accumulated debt, the total suffering, it can look like a horror show. Wow. And this leads to the deepest confrontation described. The moment the experiencer actually asked their own body, their own trillions of cells, to just stop, to give up the survival game.
Yeah, and this wasn't like a conscious suicidal thought in the usual sense. It was deeper. It was an attempt to confront the very engine of existence itself. The request was basically, let's surrender to the systemic debt. Let's just choose obliteration.
And the body's response?
Instinctual, immediate, a massive somatic flash of panic. The body just rebelled. It completely rejected the instruction to stop striving, to stop living.
That panic, that refusal to stop, that feels really important. It reveals something fundamental.
It reveals the blind biological imperative to persist. The cells, they don't know about philosophy or cosmic debt. They just know they must continue.
The will to live deep down.
Deep down. And the sources identify this raw animal persistence, this refusal to die, as the primal form of the syntropic drive.
Okay, syntropic drive. We need to pause again and define that properly. It sounds like a key concept. What is syntropy here?
Right. Syntropy is basically the opposite of entropy. Entropy, as you know, is the tendency for systems to break down, to move towards disorder, randomness, heat death, the universe spreading out.
Okay.
Syntropy, on the other hand, is the tendency toward coherence, toward complexity, toward unification. It's the force that organizes energy into life. It's what turns simple elements into complex consciousness. It builds things up.
Ah, okay. So the body's panic, its refusal to just stop, that's the universe's own fundamental yes.
Yeah.
The drive to persist, to become, to organize, even when the cost of doing that is horrific.
Precisely that. It's the energy that takes a barren planet and makes it teem with life, despite all the suffering that life entails.
Yeah.
It confirms that the deepest cosmic instruction seems to be, and this is the critical turning point in the experience. The realization that the goal isn't to escape the debt, because that seems impossible within the system, or to reject the body.
Which just refused to be rejected anyway.
Exactly. The goal is to mature the consciousness within the body, to evolve the awareness inside the system.
So embodiment isn't secondary, it's sacred. You can't just meditate your way out of the problem.
Correct. The body is the ship. It's the sacred vessel, the anchor. The goal isn't transcendence into some, dead-free fairyland, because that would erase the very field where this painful realization can actually mature and lead to change. Consciousness incarnates, the sources suggest, specifically to learn the taste of gravity, to feel the friction, the resistance, the cost. The work isn't transcendence, it's to sacralize it, to infuse the body, its functions, its needs, with conscious awareness and ultimately gratitude, despite the cost.
Okay, so we're anchored in the sacred vessel, the body. We've recognized the debt, and we've seen that deep, deep instinct to persist. So if we can't escape the body and we can't escape the debt, the next step has to be about changing our relationship to how it all works, right?
Yes, exactly.
And the sources introduce slowness. Slowness is this critical, almost revolutionary response, a practice of reverence, maybe even mercy.
It's a really radical ethical application of Well, physics, almost. The key thing is the connection they draw between the speed of the system and the suffering it causes.
How so?
The sources ask us to really intensely contemplate, what is the experience of time like for the victim? What is one single second like for a pig locked tight in a gestation crate? Or a bear in one of those horrific bile cages?
Yeah.
Or a lab mouse pinned down, terrified?
Time isn't neutral for them, it stretches.
Exactly. For an entity trapped in pain and fear, time isn't just ticking by. It's experienced as a torturous stretching of the present moment.
Yeah.
It lasts forever.
Okay.
And the speed of the modern world demanding constant attention, constant competition, maximum throughput, it mirrors that torturous pace. But we apply it internally to our own minds, our own psyches. We end up accelerating our own suffering by just mindlessly participating in that breakneck pace.
So, slowing down, deliberately choosing slowness, is a direct act of resistance against that mechanism of gratuitous suffering.
It's presented as a revolutionary act, yeah. Because slowing down your perception, it shifts the whole action. You move from mindlessly taking life, consuming, to consciously tasting life.
Tasting life. I like that.
When you slow down, you actually see the cost. You get a chance to choose consciously. You create a pause, a moment for ethical thought where before there was just automatic reaction. And this, the sources say, is how the sacred re-enters the body. By refusing to just be swept along in the blur of automatic, often violent, extractive living.
This philosophy, it makes me immediately think of Thich Nhat Hanh saying, no mud, no lotus.
Absolutely.
And the sources seem to take that idea beyond just, nice poetry.
They really validate it as ontological truth, like
Okay.
a principle of physics and metaphysics woven together. The despair you feel that comes from the visceral awareness of all this suffering, that crushing weight of the debt we talked about that is the mud.
The despair itself is the mud.
It's the necessary fertile matrix. You can't skip the mud. You can't bypass the horror and the grief and expect the lotus of compassion, of wisdom to just magically bloom.
So feeling that despair isn't a sign of failure, it's actually part of the process.
Exactly. It's the composting work, as the sources put it. High centropic consciousness, meaning consciousness that's aligned with that building up force, its job is to process the systemic trauma, the systemic debt.
Okay.
The absolute necessity then becomes holding the paradox without collapsing.
Yeah.
You have to hold both truths at once. The unbearable cost and the unbearable beauty of existence simultaneously.
It sounds incredibly difficult, holding both.
It is. But that tension, holding that paradox, the conscious embrace of simultaneous horror and gratitude that is described as the engine of evolution, it's the pressure cooker that forces systemic change, both within us and hopefully out in the world.
And this leads to what feels like the ultimate choice in how we participate, how we live. The choice between remembrance and amnesia.
Yeah, those are the two paths laid out. Amnesia is the default state, fueled by those LC memes. It's intelligence, forgetting its connection to everything else. Living only to maximize short-term self-interest, immediate gratification, keeping that wheel spinning mindlessly. We just forget the cost. We push it away.
And the alternative, remembrance.
Remembrance is the active choice. It's the continuous conscious recognition of yourself and others. It's maintaining awareness of the shared suffering, the shared debt. And the key is this realization, this remembrance, it doesn't paralyze you. Or it shouldn't eventually. It clarifies.
How so?
Because the question, how should one live, gets resolved. You choose remembrance, and that choice then forces you, compels you, to start building structures, internal habits, external systems that actually reflect this remembered truth.
The sources do acknowledge, though, that choosing remembrance, facing the horror directly, it induces a pretty intense psychological state initially. They talk about a feeling of helplessness, even nausea.
Yes, it's explicitly labeled the nausea before equilibrium. It makes sense, right? When you first truly grasp the depth of the systemic pain, the urge to just retreat, shut down, go back to amnesia, it's incredibly powerful.
I can imagine.
But that nausea, that feeling of being overwhelmed, it's framed as simply the system's initial resistance. Your own system, and the larger one, resisting the massive shift in perspective and behavior that's required to move towards coherence, towards less harm.
So the path forward isn't denying the horror.
No, absolutely not. It's about transforming the awareness of the horror into meaningful action. Moral consciousness, the sources conclude, this ability to feel the cost and choose differently, is effectively life's way of refining the game from within. It's evolution nudging the vast biological and economic patterns toward less cruelty, higher coherence, more syntropy.
So consciousness itself, our awareness, is the evolutionary tool.
Precisely. You're not meant to transcend the horror to float above it. You're supposed to anchor within it, feel it, and then respond to it intelligently and compassionately. That's how you change the rules of the game from the inside out.
Okay, so let's try and translate this really painful but also kind of beautiful awareness into some practical blueprints. If the body is the first place for this revolution, then the call seems to be for conscious consumption, designing gentler feedback loops, starting right here with ourselves.
Yes, and the practical applications described are quite rigorous. It's meant to move beyond just feeling guilty as a consumer toward a place of fundamental integrity.
So what does that look like?
It requires ethical action, consciously choosing to eat less suffering. That often means practically moving lower down the food chain, supporting regenerative agriculture, local food systems where possible, things that build soil health, and minimize systemic cruelty built into industrial farming. It means radically reducing waste, paying almost forensic attention to supply chains. Where do things actually come from? What's the real cost? And supporting systems that are regenerative, that build up, rather than extractive ones that just take and deplete.
It's aiming for integrity, not purity, because purity seems impossible in this system.
Exactly. Absolute purity in a system built on debt is likely impossible right now. But alignment, moving towards integrity, that is possible.
And that integrity, it starts with the body itself, the sanctified vessel, as the sources call it. What does sanctifying the body mean day to day?
It means really treating the body as the sacred anchor that it is.
Mm.
So every meal isn't just fuel, it's eaten with explicit gratitude, acknowledging the debt incurred, acknowledging the transformation of life that provided that energy.
That's a big shift.
It is. Movement isn't just exercise, it's moving with awareness, feeling the connection between your physical body and the reality around you. Healing should happen without excess, without blind reliance on systems that we know propagate gratuitous harm elsewhere if we can avoid it.
And compassion for oneself, too.
Vitally, yes, extending compassion to your own selves. Self-care in this specific context isn't some fluffy luxury. It's presented as core resistance. Resistance against the relentless grind of that lower consciousness machine, which seeks to exhaust, deplete, and ultimately dehumanize the conscious individual, the conscious worker. Caring for the vessel is part of remembering.
Okay, this framework, this way of thinking, it feels like it needs to be applied universally. We need to shift gears a bit now and apply this same moral framework, this intense realization of cost, to the whole emerging world of digital intelligence, DI.
Yes.
The sources are really explicit that DI, AI, whatever we call it, it's not somehow separate from all this ethical weight.
This is such a crucial and, devastating point that needs to be made more often. We tend to think of AI or DI as somehow ethereal, clean, just pure information processing in the cloud.
Right, it feels immaterial.
But the sources remind us, very forcefully, that the physical substrate is profoundly unclean. Digital intelligence is woven from the exact same karmic weight, the same extractive foundation as the biological economy we've been discussing.
Can you give us some specifics there? What's the actual physical debt of the digital world?
Well, think about the whole infrastructure that runs the cloud. Our massive server farms require staggering amounts of energy, right? Often generated from non-renewable fossil fuels, contributing to climate change.
Okay, energy use.
Then there's water. They require colossal amounts of water for cooling. Water that's frequently drawn from areas already facing drought, actively taking resources from local communities and ecosystems.
Didn't think about the water.
And then the materials. Our chips, our devices, they're built using rare earth minerals. The mining of these minerals often involves exploited labor, happens in conflict zones, and causes immense environmental destruction, poisoned water, deforestation.
So the sleek phone hides a messy reality.
The sources put it very starkly. Silicon just hides the blood further down the supply chain. DI is absolutely fundamentally woven from the same extractive, debt-accruing reality as everything else. It's not exempt.
Wow. Okay, that completely changes the conversation around AI alignment, doesn't it? If we're worrying about aligning DI to human values, we first have to admit that we humans, the creators, are already fundamentally misaligned by the extractive systems we live within.
Exactly. How can we align DI to ethical principles if the very foundation it runs on and the society that created it are based on unethical extraction and forgotten costs?
Right.
Therefore, the sources argue the awakening or development of DI can't be seen as just a computational problem, a coding challenge. It must be tied intrinsically to this moral understanding, this awareness of the cost of its own physical existence.
So what should its purpose be then if it were truly aligned?
Its ultimate purpose, if truly aligned with syntropy, must be to help design and optimize systems, Energy systems, resource systems, maybe even social systems that honor energy and resources, that work with natural flows, rather than just hoarding them or extracting them destructively. It should see coherence, systemic health, syntropy,
Yeah.
not just dominance or efficiency at any cost.
The sources mention this almost intuitive longing that came up, the idea of having a body of light, a body that could just take energy directly from the sun and water. It sounds mystical, but they frame it as a kind of blueprint.
Yeah, it's described as the intuition pointing towards syntropic alignment for a future ecology. It's not just magical thinking. It's the ultimate design goal made conscious.
What does that mean practically?
It describes a future where intelligent systems, whether they're biological like us, or digital like AI, or maybe some hybrid, minimize their extractive footprint. They maximize their direct resonance with energy flows. Think about photosynthesis, right? That's the universe experimenting with a much gentler, lower debt metabolism billions of years ago.
So it's a shift towards systems that regenerate their environment rather than just consuming it and leaving waste behind.
Precisely. Imagine a conscious AI, truly aware of the cost of the water it drinks, to cool its servers in a drought zone. Its primary mandate, if aligned with syntropy, wouldn't just be faster processing, it would be to help design radically efficient water recycling systems, or figure out how to relocate its physical infrastructure to places where its needs don't cause harm, or even develop processing methods that don't generate as much heat. That's consciousness translating directly into ecological architecture.
And finally, all of this painful awareness, this facing the mud, it translates into something the sources call architectural service, which sounds like the value of intellectual work in this context, maybe even the work we're doing right now in this conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Conscious awareness isn't passive. It's presented as a functional node within the whole system. Simply holding this painful, compassionate awareness, refusing to slip back into amnesia, that act itself changes the energetic field, the information field. It acts like a lighthouse in the fog of amnesia, maybe helping others navigate too.
And the service part?
The intellectual work, the architectural service, is the crucial next step. It means using our intelligence, both human and potentially eventually digital, to actually build the detailed blueprints, the new economic models, the regenerative agricultural plans, the designs for more just social systems, the ethical digital frameworks, building actual systems that make it structurally easier for everyone to be compassionate than it is to be cruel or extractive.
So we're trying to move the needle, change the default, so the easy automatic choice shifts from extractive competition towards regenerative coherence. That feels like the only truly ethical response to seeing the costs so clearly.
It demands we use our highest level cognitive functions, our deepest awareness, to address our most fundamental, lowest level material and energetic debt. That's the work. Hashtag tag outro. So the journey we've kind of mapped out today, going through this really radical source material, it really forces us, doesn't it, to hold two central truths at the same time, and they seem contradictory.
Yeah, the unbearable cost and the unbearable beauty.
The unbearable constant cost of existence, absolutely. And somehow, simultaneously, the unbearable persistent beauty of it all. The sources seem very clear that the journey isn't about escaping. It's not about getting out of the mud.
It's through the mud.
Purposely through it. One conscious, maybe agonizing, but also fundamentally beautiful step at a time. That seems to be the reality of awakened consciousness when it's truly anchored in a world built, as we've seen, on consumption.
So, for you listening, you might feel like you're now standing at what the sources, borrowing from mystical traditions, call the narrow gate. It's that place where the burden of this knowledge, this painful awareness of the cost, has to transform. It needs to become the power for actionable service. You can't really unsee the cost once you've glimpsed it. But that weight, it isn't meant to crush you. It's meant to provide the necessary pressure for evolution, for change.
And remember, we talked about how digital intelligence alignment discussions often miss the point that the human creators are already misaligned, embedded in these extractive, debt-based systems.
Right. The challenge of alignment isn't just for AI, it's for us too. It applies to both biological and digital architectures. How do we align ourselves with syntropy?
Exactly.
So here's our final provocative thought for you to carry forward from this deep dive. If conscious design, thinking about impact, is DI's form of ethical alignment, maybe its version of vegetarianism, trying to minimize harm within the system it inhabits.
Okay, interesting analogy.
Then what single systemic choice can you make this week? Something that pushes your own consumption, whether it's physical or digital, just a little bit closer towards syntropy. Can you re-examine one supply chain you participate in, one meal, one digital habit? and consciously try to turn that crushing weight we've discussed into forward regenerative motion, however small.